Life had not been kind to him since he returned from the army. The memories of distant battlefields haunted him, and the quiet of civilian life felt heavier than any war zone. He lived in a small apartment in a crowded city, working long hours fixing old cars in a tiny garage that barely covered the bills. Some days he wondered if all the sacrifices he had made meant anything at all. The world seemed to move on without him, leaving him behind like a forgotten relic. He had learned to live with silence. The neighbors didn't know much about him, and he preferred it that way. Friends had drifted away during the long years of service, and family, though well-meaning, seemed distant and unsure of how to talk to him now. It was a life built on small routines, small victories and quiet struggles until one afternoon, everything changed in the most unimaginable way. He was in the garage wiping grease from his hands, when a strange sound interrupted the usual rhythm of engines and tools. It was a soft, melodic hum, not mechanical, not human, but something that seemed to vibrate in the air itself. At first he thought it was some new kind of interference from his old radio, but when he looked around, everything was normal. That's when a small device blinked to life on the workbench. The screen displayed symbols that were completely alien, shapes and lines that twisted in ways human eyes weren't meant to see. His heart raced as he instinctively reached for it. A voice came next, calm but commanding, speaking in perfect English. "Do not be alarmed. You have been chosen." For a moment he froze. Chosen? By whom? And for what? He blinked at the device, expecting it to glitch or shut down. Instead, it continued. "You are now the heir to a legacy you do not yet understand. The alien king has entrusted you with a creature of immense power and notoriety. You must travel to the planet Valar to claim it." He laughed, a hollow sound, half in disbelief, half in nervousness. Aliens, a king? A creature of power? This had to be some elaborate prank. Yet the voice persisted, patient and unwavering. "Do not ignore this message. Your inheritance awaits, and your actions will determine the future of many worlds." He felt a cold sweat on his forehead. He had served humanity in the army, yes, but aliens. Interstellar politics? He had barely survived the chaos of war. And now the universe itself seemed to demand he step into a role he didn't understand. Questions flooded his mind. What kind of creature? Why him? And how could he even begin to prepare for something so far beyond his reality? Over the next few days, he found himself haunted by the message. Every time he returned to the garage, every time he closed his eyes at night, the voice echoed. He tried to dismiss it as stress, as the remnants of a life shaped by discipline and trauma. Yet no matter what he did, he felt a tug in his gut, a pull he could not ignore. Finally, after nights of restless thought, he made a decision. If this was real, if even a fragment of it was real, he had to see it for himself. So he started preparing. Money was tight, and interstellar travel was not something offered at a local travel agency. But somehow, the message had included instructions, coordinates, and even a portal that shimmered like a pool of liquid light in the middle of his empty apartment. The night before his departure, he sat on the edge of his bed staring at the swirling portal. It seemed alive, almost breathing, and he felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again, if he was about to step into something that would change him forever. He thought of his quiet life, of the little garage that had been his world, and he realized he didn't feel sadness for leaving it. Instead, he felt an odd thrill. Maybe this was a chance to break free from the endless routine, from the silent isolation he had grown used to. When he finally stepped through, the world around him dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sound. The journey was disorienting, unlike anything he had ever experienced. Time and space seemed to bend, and he could feel the pull of something powerful ahead. When the light finally faded, he found himself standing on a platform made of shimmering crystal, overlooking a city that seemed alive with color and energy. Towering spires stretched into the sky, and creatures of all shapes and sizes moved with purpose and grace. He was not alone. Figures approached, regal and commanding, dressed in garments that glowed faintly under the alien sun. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure with piercing eyes that seemed to look right through him. "Welcome, heir," the figure said, voice strong but not unkind. "You have been chosen because of your courage, your resilience, and your heart. The creature you inherit is unlike anything you have ever known." He swallowed hard, unsure whether to bow, nod, or run. "Creature?" he repeated, his voice small in the vastness of the alien city. The figure nodded. "Yes, it is feared, hated, and misunderstood. Even I, the king, could not control it. but it will respond to you if you approach with honesty and respect." The weight of those words settled heavily on him. He had faced danger in the army, but nothing like this. He had trained for combat, for strategy, for survival against human opponents. But this was beyond comprehension, and yet strangely he did not feel panic. There was a spark of determination inside him, a thread of confidence that he could not explain. Somehow he felt he could rise to the challenge, even if he didn't yet know what the challenge truly was. A servant, or perhaps a guide, led him through winding streets and bridges made of translucent material, until they arrived at a massive chamber. The doors were enormous, etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer as if alive. Beyond them, a low rumble vibrated through the floor. He froze. This was it, the creature he was to inherit. The doors slowly opened, revealing a space filled with shadows and shapes, scales glinting like molten metal in the light. And then he saw it, the dragon. It was enormous, far larger than anything he had imagined. Its eyes, golden and intelligent, fixed on him immediately. The rumble of its breathing shook the floor. For a moment he thought he might faint. And then it spoke. "You, human, you are mine now." The voice was deep, resonant, and unmistakably human in tone. There was curiosity, a hint of amusement, and something sharper. Challenge. He blinked. The dragon could speak like a human. That alone was enough to make him question reality. But as he steadied himself, he realized something important. Fear alone would not help him. He had faced impossible odds before. He had survived battles that others thought he could not. And if he wanted to claim this inheritance, he would have to step forward, meet the dragon's gaze, and prove that he was more than just a scared, struggling veteran. The dragon leaned forward, its massive head tilting slightly. "Do you even know what you are getting into, human?" He took a deep breath. "No," he admitted honestly, "but I'm ready to try." For the first time, the dragon made a sound that resembled a laugh, deep and rumbling. And in that moment he felt a connection, fragile but real, forming between them. This was the beginning of a story that would change his life forever. A journey that would test courage, patience, and the strange bond between a man and a being from another world. He had no idea how hard it would be or how dangerous. But stepping into that chamber, facing the dragon's eyes, he knew one thing with certainty. Life, as he had known it, was over. And something incredible was about to begin. Stepping into the chamber, he felt the air thicken. The dragon's massive presence was overwhelming. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, reflecting light in strange, shifting patterns. Every instinct screamed at him to back away, yet something inside told him to stay. He had seen fear before on the battlefield in the eyes of men facing impossible odds. But this was different. This was intelligent fear, a living being measuring him, testing him with every slow, deliberate movement. The dragon's eyes fixed on him, golden and piercing. Its nostrils flared, sending small gusts of warm air that smelled faintly metallic, like iron mixed with smoke. Then it spoke again, its voice deep, smooth, almost human. "You are small, yet the king says I am yours. Tell me, human, why should I obey you?" He swallowed hard. His mind raced. He had trained for many situations where quick thinking and courage saved lives, but negotiating with a talking dragon was not in any manual he had ever studied. Still, he remembered something his commanding officer had once said during training. "You earn respect not by fear, but by showing who you really are." "I don't expect you to obey me immediately," he said slowly, choosing each word. I just want to understand you. If we are going to be together, I need to know who you are, and maybe in time you can know me too." The dragon's eyes narrowed, and it let out a low rumble that shook the floor. "Understanding? Ha! You are a human, weak and small. You speak of understanding as if words could matter to me. I have lived centuries, seen entire civilizations rise and fall. You think you can make me listen?" He flinched at the sheer power in the dragon's voice, but he forced himself to stand tall. "Maybe I can't make you listen, but I can try. I've survived things that seemed impossible, and I don't give up easily." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The dragon circled him slowly, each step echoing like a drumbeat. He felt every vibration through his boots, every flick of its tail a warning, yet he did not flinch. Instead, he kept his eyes on the dragon, trying not to show fear, trying to project calm. Finally, the dragon stopped and lowered its massive head so that its eyes were level with his. "Interesting," it said, almost contemplatively. "Few humans dare to meet me without trembling. Most run or scream, perhaps You are not like the others. He let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. I'm not, he said simply. I've faced danger before, and I've learned that fear doesn't solve anything. The dragon let out a sound that resembled a chuckle. Bold words for someone so small. We shall see if you are truly worthy. Over the next few days, he tried to learn everything about the dragon. It was not an easy task. The creature's mood could shift in an instant, from playful curiosity to deadly rage. Its speech was sharp, often sarcastic, and occasionally cruel, testing his patience and resolve. When he asked simple questions about its past, it would answer only in riddles or mockery. Yet he persisted. He began noticing patterns in its behavior. The dragon had routines, likes and dislikes, and even a strange sense of humor. It seemed to enjoy watching him struggle with tasks that seemed simple, like moving heavy objects or navigating the alien terrain surrounding the chamber. But he learned to anticipate its reactions, to read its subtle cues. A flick of its tail meant irritation. A rumble through the floor meant curiosity. A slight narrowing of its eyes meant suspicion. One afternoon, he attempted something bold. He brought a strange fruit he had found in the alien gardens and placed it carefully before the dragon. I don't know if you like this, he said quietly, but I wanted to try. The dragon sniffed the fruit, then stared at him with its golden eyes. You dare approach me with offerings? Most humans would throw it and flee. I'm not most humans, he said firmly, though his heart pounded. The dragon regarded him silently for a long moment. Then, astonishingly, it took the fruit with one careful claw and ate it. Acceptable, it muttered. And for the first time, he noticed something shift, an almost imperceptible change in the dragon's posture. A softening, a sign that it might be willing to engage with him on more than just fear. Days turned into weeks, and the veteran began to realize that survival with the dragon required more than courage. It required patience, empathy, and creativity. If he reacted in anger or frustration, the dragon would respond with mockery or outright hostility. But if he listened, observed, and approached it calmly, the dragon showed fleeting moments of trust. He began documenting everything, taking careful mental notes of the dragon's behaviors. He noticed that it seemed fascinated by simple things humans often overlooked. A small flame, a drop of water, even the way he tied his boots. When he moved slowly and spoke softly, the dragon often stayed close, watching, listening, and sometimes mimicking sounds. One evening, as the alien sun set and painted the crystal spires with golden light, the dragon finally spoke in a way that startled him. You have patience, human. Most would have broken by now or fled in fear.
Why do you persist?
He considered the question carefully. Because I don't have the luxury of fear, and because I believe that even the most dangerous creatures, maybe especially them, deserve a chance to be understood. The dragon tilted its massive head, almost as if studying him for the first time. Humans are curious, weak but sometimes clever. Perhaps there is more in you than I first imagined. That night, he slept lightly in a small corner of the chamber, exhausted but alive with a strange sense of accomplishment. The dragon had not yet obeyed him, nor had it shown any true affection, but a subtle shift had occurred. It was no longer completely hostile. It allowed him to exist in its presence, and that was progress. Over time, he discovered that the dragon was not just intelligent, but deeply emotional. It held grudges, it felt boredom, and it displayed signs of curiosity that were almost childlike. By offering patience instead of force, he began to build a fragile bridge between human and beast. One day the dragon spoke unexpectedly. You have grown stronger, human. Not in muscle, but in mind. It is unusual. The king was wrong to think I would hate you entirely. He smiled, a mix of relief and disbelief. Maybe he underestimated me. Or maybe he underestimated you. The dragon's eyes narrowed, suspicious yet intrigued. Perhaps. We shall see how far this understanding can go. Do not think that because I tolerate you now, I will always do so. There are trials ahead, and only through them will you truly prove yourself. He nodded, feeling a spark of determination ignite within him. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I'll learn, I'll adapt, and I'll face whatever trials are ahead. I won't run. And with that, the first real bond began to form, not one of dominance or submission, but one of mutual recognition. The dragon, feared by entire galaxies and hated even by its king, had begun to acknowledge the human before it as someone worthy of attention. He knew the journey had only begun. Challenges lay ahead, both from the dragon itself and from forces he could not yet imagine. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of purpose. He was no longer just a struggling veteran on Earth. He was part of something far bigger, something beyond comprehension, and yet deeply personal. The days that followed were filled with lessons, some small, like understanding how to approach the dragon without triggering its anger, and some large, like facing its sudden outbursts of power that shook the chamber and tested his courage. Every interaction was a test, every word a negotiation, but slowly, the dragon began to accept him. And in that acceptance he found hope. Hope not only for surviving in this strange alien world, but for discovering strength within himself he had never known. The dragon, despite its fearsome appearance and sharp tongue, was teaching him lessons about patience, understanding, and the unexpected ways that trust could be earned. By the end of the second part of this journey, the veteran had begun to realize that he was not just inheriting a dragon, he was inheriting a life-changing responsibility, a partnership that would challenge everything he thought he knew about fear, courage, and connection. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. The bond between human and dragon had begun, and neither of them would ever be the same again. Life with the dragon had begun to take shape, though it was far from easy. The veteran had learned small routines, how to move without startling the creature, how to speak softly when it was restless, and when to step back and let it be. Yet each day brought new surprises, and every moment required constant attention. The dragon, despite the growing trust between them, was still unpredictable, powerful, and sharp-tongued. One morning he awoke to a low rumble shaking the chamber. He sat up slowly, heart pounding, and saw the dragon pacing back and forth, its massive tail slamming against the floor. Smoke curled from its nostrils and its golden eyes glimmered with tension. "Something is wrong," the dragon said, its voice deep and filled with unease. "I feel in others, watching, waiting. They are not friendly." He froze. He had heard stories from the king's messenger that the dragon was hated across many worlds, feared by rival factions, and considered uncontrollable. Now for the first time he realized he might see that hatred firsthand. "Who are they?" he asked cautiously. "They are hunters," the dragon replied, "beings who wish to claim me or destroy me. They will not care about you, human, only about me." He felt a shiver run down his spine. His army training had taught him to face enemies head-on, but this was unlike anything he had prepared for. These were creatures from another world, beings whose strength and technology far surpassed anything he had ever seen, and yet he knew he could not let fear control him. "We'll face them together," he said, voice steady. "I won't leave you alone." The dragon regarded him silently for a long moment, then snorted. "You are bold. Perhaps foolishly so. Very well, human. We shall see if your courage matches your words." For the next few days they prepared. He studied the dragon's abilities carefully, noting how it moved, how it breathed fire, and how it could strike with precision. He mapped the chamber and surrounding areas, identifying places to hide, escape routes, and positions from which they could defend themselves. The dragon, surprisingly cooperative, demonstrated its strengths in training sessions that were both exhausting and enlightening. Despite the tension, moments of levity emerged. The dragon, despite its fearsome reputation, had quirks that made the veteran smile. It enjoyed playful challenges like chasing objects he tossed or attempting to mimic small gestures he made. It would sometimes speak in riddles or mock him humorously, as if testing his patience and wit. Slowly, he began to see not just the power of the creature but its personality, its intelligence, curiosity, and even a strange sense of humor. Then the day of the first real test arrived. A shadow darkened the chamber as a fleet of alien ships descended from the sky. They moved with precision, surrounding the city and landing strategically around the dragon's sanctuary. From the ships, creatures emerged armed with weapons unlike any he had seen. Their expressions were cold, focused, and merciless. "Get down!" the dragon roared, and he instinctively dropped to the ground as the dragon leapt forward, wings unfolding in a blur of motion. Fire erupted from its mouth, scorching the ground near the intruders, sending them scattering. The air was filled with the smell of burning metal and the sound of heavy claws striking stone. He felt a surge of adrenaline, his heart racing like it had on the battlefield years ago. Only this time the stakes were higher. Not just his life, but the life of the dragon and perhaps even his home was in danger. He moved carefully using cover, observing the dragon's movements and assisting where he could. His small interventions, throwing objects to distract attackers, blocking entrances, and signaling the dragon proved surprisingly effective. During a brief lull, he caught his breath and looked at the dragon. Despite the chaos, its eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment there was acknowledgement. The creature trusted him enough to fight alongside him. That realization, small but profound, strengthened his resolve. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of motion, strategy, and near misses. The veteran used every skill he had, blending his army training with newfound ingenuity. The dragon, powerful as it was, also relied on him in ways he never expected. Together they formed a rhythm, a partnership born from trust, courage, and mutual respect. When the dust finally settled, the invaders retreated, their ships ascending into the sky with a roar. The dragon landed heavily, breathing hard but victorious. It looked down at him, eyes glowing with something he couldn't name. Pride, respect, perhaps even affection. "You survived," the dragon said, its voice deep and calm now. "Few humans could have done what you did. You have proven yourself, human." He smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. "We survived together." For the first time, he felt a true sense of accomplishment. This was not just surviving, it was partnership. The dragon, once feared and hated by all, was no longer entirely untouchable. It had accepted him as an equal, a companion, and even a friend. That bond, fragile and new, had been forged in the fires of their first real challenge. In the days that followed, he noticed subtle changes in the dragon. It allowed him closer, moved with less caution around him, and even initiated small interactions, nudging objects toward him, speaking softly, and occasionally curling its massive body near him during rest periods. It was still powerful, still dangerous, but it had begun to recognize him not as a threat, but as a partner. He, too, was changing. The fear and isolation that had defined his life after the army were giving way to confidence, purpose, and a sense of belonging. For the first time in years, he felt that he was needed, not just by humans or by duty, but by a being unlike any he had ever known. Then came a quiet evening when the dragon spoke unexpectedly, almost in a whisper. "You are unlike any other human I have encountered. You do not flee from fear. You do not bow to power, and you do not lie to yourself or to me. That is unusual." He shrugged, unsure how to respond. "I've had to face fear before. You're not that different. We just have to figure out how to work together." The dragon tilted its massive head, considering him. "Perhaps. We shall see how far this alliance can go. The galaxy is not kind to either of us, human. Threats will come again, and we must be ready. You are learning. Slowly, but you are learning." He nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and anticipation. The challenges ahead were unknown, but the first real test had been survived. The trust between them, fragile and new, was beginning to solidify. He realized that life with the dragon was no longer simply about survival. It was about partnership, understanding, and preparing for the future together. As he lay down that night, he thought about how far he had come in a few weeks. He had gone from a struggling veteran, alone and uncertain, to a man who had faced impossible odds and earned the tentative trust of a creature that entire worlds feared. The path ahead was still uncertain, full of danger, intrigue, and unknown challenges, but for the first time, he did not feel powerless. He felt ready. The dragon, curled near him, emitted a low, almost contented rumble. It was not affection in a human sense, but it was close, a recognition that they were, at least for now, allies. And that recognition, small as it was, filled him with a quiet determination. This was only the beginning. The veteran knew that the galaxy held far greater challenges, threats he could not yet imagine, and lessons he had yet to learn. But for the first time he felt that he could face them, not as a solitary human, but as part of a bond with a being as powerful, intelligent, and complex as any he had ever encountered. In those moments, he understood something essential. Surviving was not enough. Thriving required understanding, trust, and courage in equal measure. And if he could continue to earn the dragon's trust, there was nothing he could not face. The future was uncertain. Danger awaited. But the veteran and the dragon, once predator and prey, once stranger and adversary, had begun to walk a path together, a path that would change both of them forever. And though the galaxy was wide, hostile, and filled with enemies, they would face it together. The days after their first battle passed in a mix of tension and cautious peace. The veteran had begun to feel more confident around the dragon, and the dragon in turn allowed him more freedom within the chamber. Yet the quiet was deceptive. They both knew that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and the alien hunters who had attacked before were unlikely to give up. One morning, a loud metallic vibration shook the chamber. He looked up to see the sky outside darkened by massive ships descending in formation. The veteran's heart pounded. These ships were larger, more advanced, and there were far more of them than the last time. He realized immediately that this was no random attack. This was a calculated strike. "Human," the dragon said, voice low and serious. "These are the hunters of the Intergalactic Council. They are relentless. This time it will not be simple." He swallowed hard, but he did not falter. "Then we fight together. We've survived before and we can survive again." The dragon's eyes glimmered, showing a hint of respect. "You speak boldly. Perhaps too boldly. But we shall see if your courage holds under pressure." For hours they prepared. The veteran studied the chamber and surrounding terrain, marking vantage points and escape routes. He rigged simple traps using alien materials he had learned to manipulate, testing each one carefully. The dragon moved beside him, giving guidance and demonstrating its power, yet allowing him to take the lead. This was new. In past encounters, the dragon had acted independently, sometimes unpredictably, but now it trusted his decisions enough to coordinate, a silent acknowledgement that he had begun to earn its respect. As the alien ships landed, the ground trembled beneath their massive weight. Armored warriors poured out, weapons glowing with energy, and their coordinated movements left no doubt. They were highly trained and ruthless. The veteran felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. He had faced enemy soldiers before, but these were different, faster, stronger, and alien in every way. Yet he did not hesitate. He and the dragon moved as one, each instinct complementing the other. The battle began with a roar from the dragon that shook the very air. Flames shot from its mouth, scorching the alien warriors and sending some flying backward. The veteran darted between debris, using the environment to his advantage, throwing objects to distract enemies, and signaling the dragon to focus on specific targets. It was chaos, beautiful in its terrifying rhythm. He had never felt such clarity in the midst of battle. His training, his instincts, and the bond he had formed with the dragon converged into something greater. Each movement of the dragon was mirrored by his actions, each roar coordinated with his strategy. For the first time, he realized that they were not just fighting. They were leading together. At one point, a massive alien mech appeared, towering over both of them. Its weapons fired with devastating accuracy, forcing the veteran to dive for cover. The dragon growled, its wings spreading wide as it launched itself into the air, diving toward the mech with incredible speed. The ground shook as the dragon struck, claws ripping into the armor. Yet the mech retaliated, striking back with energy blasts that forced both of them to retreat. He watched, calculating, and then acted. Using a combination of alien materials and simple physics, he managed to disable a portion of the mech's weapon systems. The dragon, recognizing the opportunity, attacked again with precision, bringing the massive machine down. For a moment, time seemed suspended, as if the universe itself acknowledged their partnership. After hours of relentless fighting, the alien warriors finally began to retreat, their formations broken and morale shattered. The veteran and the dragon stood together, exhausted but victorious. The veteran's hands were blistered, his clothes scorched, and sweat and dust covered him. The dragon's scales were scratched, and smoke curled from its nostrils, but it stood proud, its golden eyes meeting his with something close to approval. "You survived," the dragon said, voice deep and calm. "And more than that, you adapted. You led and you protected. Few humans could do what you did. I am impressed." He smiled, though fatigue weighed heavily on him. "We did it together. That's the only reason we survived." The dragon let out a low rumble, a sound that carried satisfaction. "Perhaps you are learning faster than I expected. You think like a soldier, yet you also think like me in ways most humans never could. This pleases me." That night, as they rested, he noticed another change in the dragon. It moved closer, not threateningly, but almost protectively. It even allowed him to touch its massive claw, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks before. He realized that the dragon's respect was growing, not through fear, but through recognition of his intelligence, courage, and persistence. Over the next days, they focused on training together. The dragon taught him how to anticipate enemy movements, how to understand subtle cues, and even how to harness his own instincts in new ways. In return, the veteran shared strategies learned from his military experience, showing the dragon methods of defense, coordination, and patience. Together, they became more than a human and a dragon. They became a team, a force capable of facing challenges neither could handle alone. Then, the alien king appeared through a holographic projection, watching the battle from afar. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried across the chamber. "You have done well, human. You have survived where others would have fallen. The dragon is learning from you and you from it. Perhaps you are worthy after all." The veteran looked at the dragon, who simply snorted as if to say, "I'm the judge, not him." He laughed softly. "I guess the king wasn't expecting this either," he said. The dragon's eyes glimmered. "Do not celebrate too soon, human. This is only one battle. The galaxy is wide, and there are many who wish to challenge us. But today you have proven your worth." The veteran nodded, understanding the truth in its words. Victory was not permanent, and challenges would come again. But for the first time, he felt a deep, unshakable confidence. Not just in himself, but in their partnership. He had grown from a struggling veteran into a leader, someone capable of strategy, courage, and adaptability in ways he had never imagined. As the alien ships disappeared into the sky, leaving behind only scorched terrain and echoes of battle, he and the dragon stood together surveying the aftermath. The air was still, except for the distant rumble of retreating engines and the wind whispering through the alien spires. "You have changed," the dragon said quietly. "You are no longer merely a human who survived. You are someone who commands respect, who thinks, who leads. This is impressive." He smiled, looking up at the sky tinged with alien light. "We've both changed," he said. "I've learned from you, and you. Maybe you've learned from me too." The dragon's eyes glimmered almost warmly. "Perhaps. But remember this, human, the galaxy does not forgive weakness. We must remain vigilant. We are not yet done." He nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the thrill of purpose. For the first time, he understood that his life had taken on meaning beyond himself. He was no longer just a struggling veteran, no longer just a man haunted by memories of the past. He was a leader, a companion, and part of something greater, a partnership that could survive even the deadliest threats the universe could throw at them. And as they stood side by side, he realized something else. He was not afraid anymore. Fear had not disappeared, it never would, but he had learned to face it, to act despite it, and to trust in himself and the dragon. Together, they were a force that could not be easily broken. The battle had ended, but the journey was far from over. Challenges lay ahead, enemies still lurked in shadows, and lessons were yet to be learned. But in that moment, standing beside a creature feared and hated across galaxies, he felt the incredible truth of their bond. Together, they were unstoppable, and together they could face whatever the universe had in store. Life had started to feel different, though the veteran and the dragon both knew that peace was fragile. The galaxy was unpredictable, full of creatures and beings with power and intent he could barely imagine. He had grown confident in his partnership with the dragon, but there was still much he did not understand about the creature, the alien king, and the universe around him. One quiet morning, a holographic message appeared before them, shimmering with the alien king's presence. His expression was stern, yet there was something in his eyes that suggested both curiosity and caution. "You have done well, human," the king said, voice resonant and serious. "The dragon is learning from you, and you are learning from it. But there is more you must understand. The dragon you inherited was once meant for another purpose, a test, a warning, and a lesson. The time has come for you to know the truth." The veteran leaned forward, heart pounding. "What truth?" he asked, unsure of what he might hear. The king's gaze was steady. "The dragon is not simply a creature of fear. It has been hated, shunned, and misunderstood for centuries. I once tried to control it, to use it as a weapon against my enemies.
But it would not obey me.
I feared it, and so I spread stories of its cruelty to ensure others kept their distance. That hatred, that fear, was never meant to harm you. It was meant to prepare the one worthy to inherit it. You, human, have proven worthy. The veteran's mind raced. He had always thought of the dragon as dangerous, unpredictable, perhaps even malevolent. Yet now he realized that all the hatred surrounding it had been a mask, a way for the king to test who could survive its presence, who could connect with it despite its fearsome nature. He looked at the dragon, who was watching silently, its golden eyes fixed on him. "Is that true?" he asked softly. The dragon let out a low rumble, its wings folding slightly. "It matters little what the king says. What matters is this: you have endured, human. You have faced challenges, threats, and trials that would have broken most, and yet you remain. You think, you plan, you care. That is why I tolerate you, and perhaps why I respect you." He felt a lump in his throat. Respect from this creature, feared across galaxies, was unlike anything he had ever received. It was not casual or easy. It had been earned through persistence, courage, and understanding. And in that moment he realized that the dragon's acceptance was more meaningful than anything he could have imagined. The king's message continued. "There is another reason for this inheritance. The dragon has knowledge, power, and insight that could change the balance of the galaxy. It was left to you because you can understand it, guide it, and perhaps teach it something few others could. The choice is now yours, whether to use this inheritance for survival alone or to embrace a greater purpose." The veteran considered this carefully. He had spent years fighting for survival, struggling to find meaning in the life he had returned to after the army. Yet now, standing in front of a being with such power and wisdom, he felt something stir inside him, a sense of responsibility and possibility far greater than anything he had known. "I want to understand," he said finally. "Not just survive, not just control, but truly understand. I want to learn from you and help you if you will let me." The dragon's eyes narrowed, thoughtful. Few humans speak like that. Many seek power or fear. You to seek understanding. That is unusual. Perhaps we can try. Over the next days, the dragon began to share its history carefully, piece by piece. It spoke of centuries spent in isolation, of battles fought and won, of the countless beings who had tried and failed to control it. It told stories of loss, of betrayal, and of moments where its immense power had been both a gift and a burden. The veteran listened, fascinated. He realized that the dragon's fearsome reputation had been built not from cruelty alone, but from misunderstanding, from the actions of those who sought to control it without respect. Every story he heard deepened his empathy and strengthened their bond. He began to see the creature not just as powerful or dangerous, but as intelligent, complex, and even lonely in ways that mirrored his own life. Then came the first true test of understanding. The king warned that forces across the galaxy, jealous and fearful of the dragon's power, would soon send emissaries to challenge him. These would not be mindless attackers, but beings capable of reasoning, deception, and cunning. The veteran realized that brute strength alone would not suffice. He would need strategy, diplomacy, and the full cooperation of the dragon. When the emissaries arrived, they were unlike anything he had seen before. They were sleek, intelligent, and their weapons were designed not just to harm, but to manipulate, to test the bond between him and the dragon. The veteran felt a surge of fear but did not hesitate. He had learned that fear could be faced, that challenges could be overcome through patience, understanding, and teamwork. The confrontation began with dialogue, a tense negotiation where the emissaries tried to undermine his confidence, question the dragon's loyalty, and sow doubt. But the veteran remained calm, speaking honestly, listening carefully, and demonstrating respect to both the dragon and the emissaries. The dragon surprisingly responded in kind, showing restraint, judgment, and even humor. It was a test not of battle, but of connection, understanding, and trust. The veteran realized that this was the essence of his inheritance, not merely survival, not merely power, but the ability to lead, guide, and form alliances even in the most dangerous circumstances. By the end of the encounter, the emissaries had withdrawn, not defeated by force, but convinced by the human's integrity and the dragon's judgment. The veteran and the dragon had faced the challenge together, and in doing so, had strengthened their partnership in ways neither could have predicted. That night, as the alien skies glowed with unfamiliar stars, the dragon spoke quietly. "You have grown, human. You are no longer just one who survives, but one who understands, who leads, and who inspires. Few creatures would have earned my trust. Fewer still could have done so with honor. The veteran felt a deep warmth at those words. He had never been praised like this before, and from this being the recognition was profound. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You taught me what it means to think, to act, and to understand. I respect you more than I can say." The dragon's massive head lowered slightly as if acknowledging his words. "Then perhaps we are no longer simply human and dragon, master and servant. Perhaps we are partners, and in this galaxy that is stronger than fear or hatred." In the following days, they continued to train and explore together. The dragon shared more of its history, teaching him not only about its past but about the delicate balance of power, trust, and respect in the galaxy. He shared his own experiences from the army, teaching the dragon about human ingenuity, strategy, and empathy. Through these exchanges, their bond deepened. The veteran learned to anticipate the dragon's needs, to communicate without words, and to act with foresight. The dragon, in turn, learned patience, humor, and the value of partnership beyond fear and domination. Together, they were becoming a force capable of influencing not just their immediate surroundings, but the galaxy itself. And yet, despite this progress, he knew the journey was far from over. The alien king's revelations had opened new doors, but also new responsibilities. Threats remained, challenges were inevitable, and the true test of their partnership had yet to come. But for the first time, he felt prepared, not through strength alone, but through understanding, trust, and the unique bond he had formed with a being once feared and hated across galaxies. As they stood side by side, watching the twin suns set on the horizon of the alien world, he realized something profound. This inheritance, terrifying and unexpected as it had been, had given him purpose, courage, and a connection that went beyond life, beyond fear, and beyond understanding. The dragon, once a symbol of hatred and danger, had become his teacher, ally, and friend, and he knew, deep in his heart, that together they could face whatever the universe had in store. Because understanding, respect, and trust were more powerful than any weapon, more enduring than fear, and more transformative than power alone. This revelation marked the turning point in their journey. The veteran had moved from survivor to leader, from observer to partner, and from human alone to part of something extraordinary. And the dragon, too, had begun to change, learning that companionship, patience, and trust were not weaknesses, but strengths that could shape destinies across the galaxy. The air was thick with anticipation as the veteran and the dragon prepared for the journey back to Earth. After months of training, battles, and discoveries, they were no longer the hesitant, uncertain duo who had first met in the alien chamber. They had grown together, stronger, wiser, and deeply connected. Yet despite all their victories, both knew that returning to Earth would bring a final test, one unlike any they had faced before. The veteran stared at the swirling portal, the same one that had first brought him to the alien world. He took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. Earth had changed little since he had left, but he knew that the world below would never fully understand what awaited them. He glanced at the dragon, whose golden eyes studied him carefully. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. The dragon let out a low rumble, wings stretching slightly. "I am ready, human. But remember, returning to your world will not be simple. There are those who fear what they cannot understand. You must guide them, and I will follow." With a nod, he stepped forward. The portal shimmered, enveloping them both in a cascade of light and sound. The journey was disorienting, yet he felt no fear this time. He had faced battles across galaxies, commanded the respect of a being feared by all, and survived challenges that would have broken most men. He was no longer the man who had walked into the alien chamber months ago. When the light faded, they stood on the outskirts of a city he had once called home. The familiar skyline now seemed small and fragile compared to the vast worlds he had seen. But the veteran knew their mission was not simply to return. It was to face the consequences of bringing a dragon into a world that had never encountered anything like it. At first, people fled at the sight of the massive creature. Cars skidded to a stop, drones buzzed overhead, and sirens wailed as chaos erupted. He held up his hands, signaling calm, speaking loudly and clearly. "Stop. This dragon is not here to harm anyone. Trust me." For a moment it seemed impossible. The dragon's size and power were overwhelming. Yet the veteran remained steady, using everything he had learned about trust, communication, and presence. Slowly, the people began to pause, curiosity mixing with fear. The dragon moved carefully, its massive claws barely touching the pavement. It lowered its head slightly, showing restraint, and even allowed a few brave humans to approach under his guidance. Its golden eyes scanned the crowd, and he could see that it was testing him, just as he had learned to test it. Together, they were teaching the city to understand, not to fear. News spread quickly, and soon officials, scientists, and media arrived. Some were hostile, some were curious, but all were aware that this was an unprecedented moment. The veteran stepped forward as a calm voice of reason. This dragon is intelligent. It is not a threat unless provoked. It has been my companion, my teacher, and my ally. You must approach with respect, not fear. The crowd watched, hesitant, as the dragon's massive head lowered again. It seemed to listen, to understand. And in that moment, the veteran realized that he had done something extraordinary. He had bridged two worlds, the human and the alien, and the dragon, feared by all, had chosen to follow his guidance. Yet challenges arose quickly. Military forces, wary and untrusting, surrounded the area. They had orders to neutralize threats, and a dragon of unimaginable size and strength certainly qualified. The veteran raised his hands again, speaking with calm authority. "Stop, you are looking at fear, not reality. This creature has been my companion. It will not harm anyone as long as we respect it." The dragon, sensing his command, let out a low, controlled rumble. It stepped forward slowly, showing no aggression. Yet its presence alone reminded everyone that power was here, immense and undeniable. Slowly, tension began to ease. People could see that he and the dragon were partners, not master and slave, and that partnership was grounded in trust and understanding. Over the following days, the veteran worked tirelessly to teach humans how to interact with the dragon. He demonstrated its intelligence, its ability to follow commands, and its restraint. Scientists studied it, marveling at its biology and capabilities, while he guided interactions, emphasizing patience, communication, and empathy. The dragon, for its part, was cautious but cooperative. Its golden eyes would flick to him for guidance, and he'd learned to anticipate its reactions, guiding both it and the humans in harmony. As the city grew accustomed to the dragon's presence, a more subtle challenge emerged. News of its arrival spread across the globe, sparking fear, fascination, and envy. Leaders from other nations demanded control, corporations sought to profit, and skeptics warned of catastrophe. The veteran realized that this was a test not of survival, but of leadership. He had to navigate not only the dragon's power, but also human politics, fear, and greed. He relied on everything he had learned, from the army, from his experiences with the dragon, and from his own intuition. He spoke openly, honestly, and with patience, earning trust not through fear or force, but through clarity, empathy, and integrity. The dragon, sensing his authority, followed his guidance, demonstrating restraint and intelligence. Together they showed the world that fear could be managed, that understanding could replace panic, and that trust was stronger than force. Then, a final test arrived unexpectedly. A group of extremists seeking to exploit the dragon's power attempted to provoke it. They fired weapons, shouted threats, and tried to manipulate the creature into attacking. For a moment, tension surged. The crowd froze, expecting chaos. The veteran acted swiftly. He stepped between the dragon and the extremist, speaking firmly. "Stop, this is your choice. You are testing a friend, not an enemy. Violence will not solve anything." The dragon, sensing his resolve, remained calm. Its massive wings shifted slightly, but it did not attack. Instead, it lowered its head, waiting, observing, and responding to his commands. The extremists, confronted by the combination of human courage and dragon power, hesitated and then retreated, realizing that force alone could not manipulate this bond. The veteran breathed deeply, relief washing over him. He looked at the dragon, whose golden eyes met his with acknowledgement and trust. They had faced fear, hostility, and misunderstanding, and emerged stronger, united, and unshakable. Over the next weeks, Earth began to adapt. People learned that the dragon was not a weapon, but a companion, a teacher, and a guardian. Children drew its image. Scientists studied it with reverence, and communities gradually accepted that coexistence was possible. And throughout it all, the veteran and the dragon remained partners, guiding, teaching, and protecting one another. One evening, standing atop a quiet hill overlooking the city, the veteran looked at the dragon. Its scales shimmered in the fading light, and its golden eyes reflected both wisdom and curiosity. "We've come a long way," he said softly. "I never imagined this life, this partnership, or this responsibility. But I wouldn't change it for anything." The dragon rumbled in agreement, a sound that conveyed not just contentment but respect. "Neither would I, human. Few could have earned my trust, guided me, and understood me. You are remarkable." He smiled, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. This was more than survival, more than victory. It was connection, purpose, and the fulfillment of a journey that had begun with uncertainty and fear. They had faced enemies, overcome mistrust, and bridged worlds. And in doing so, they had forged a legacy, one of courage, understanding, and partnership. As the sun set, painting the skies with colors he had never imagined, he realized the truth of their journey. Power without understanding was dangerous. Fear without guidance was paralyzing, and strength without connection was meaningless. But together, he and the dragon had created something extraordinary, a bond that transcended species, worlds, and fear. And in that moment, the veteran understood something profound. His life, once defined by struggle and loneliness, had transformed. He was no longer just a man haunted by his past, nor a soldier seeking purpose. He was a leader, a partner, and a guardian of a being that had once been feared and hated across galaxies. The dragon, once a symbol of destruction, had become a teacher, a companion, and a friend. Together they had faced impossible odds, learned from one another, and changed not only their own destinies but the world around them. And as night fell, casting shadows across the city, the veteran knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, challenges were endless, and threats would come again. But he was no longer alone. He had learned courage, patience, trust, and leadership, and he had a companion who shared his journey. Together they would face whatever came next, not as master and beast, but as partners, as equals, and as a force capable of changing the world. And for the first time in his life, he felt completely, undeniably ready.